How are you?
I know we're here to look ahead, but I'm wondering if we could look back on the last game. Obviously, the refereeing decisions are still being talked about. I'm wondering whether you've had any communication from refereeing authorities or any clarification about the incidents of the weekend.
No, but I will catch up in due course. Our own thoughts, I thought I made mine clear. They haven't really changed, to be honest. I think we're hoping for better going forwards. I think there's a couple of harsh calls on that day. For a very soft penalty at Fulham, which I didn't go overboard on that one. And I think, well, eventually then you've got to make sure you're standing up for yourself, because I thought the game against Man City, there was a lot went against us.
Yeah, are you looking at the table results and thinking, hang on a minute, because you mentioned Fulham, but that's not the only game this season where you've been on the wrong end of one. Where you're thinking this is actually starting to cost us now?
Yeah, I think there was some at the beginning of the season, some of the early games, which I wasn't manager, so I'm not privy to them moments. But the ones since I've been here, I think there's been a number, and I just think probably the Man City one encapsulated it. And on a day when we'd played very well, and you don't want the decisions to go against you in the sense when it really affects the outcome of the game. And it didn't purely affect it, but it must have had some form of outcome. And of course, the biggest one being a second yellow, and they go off. And now, don't get me wrong, Man City are a fine side without a doubt. So you never know; it doesn't guarantee everything that you want, but it certainly gives you a better chance if it's 11v10. And I think that was a very, very simple decision to make. So we're just hoping for better in the future.
So you're happy with the performance on Saturday. How do you build on that going into a game against Everton, a team in which you obviously played recently but didn't get the performance you wanted?
Well, yeah, we've certainly got to perform better. I think it's a good chance for us at home as well to, I think really sort of rubber stamp the improvements that have been made, because I think there has been improvements. I think, the performances, but also the points outcome. Europa alongside that, but it is now, can you go and grip them games? Can you go and, take these games on, win, and then it all looks different all of a sudden, and I think that's the next step for us. Thought we could have done that at Fulham. We didn't capitalise on it on the night, but we've got to go and do that, and certainly tomorrow night against Everton will be a great restart, if you like, because we've not been far away. Obviously, a big talk about a very, very good performance against Tottenham. And then, as I said, a slightly indifferent one against Fulham, a harsh decision, I thought, and then a couple of harsh decisions go against us against Man City. And, you could have another 2 points on the table, but if it's an hands and pots and pans and all that, as my mum and dad used to say, so we've got to make things happen, not wait for them to happen.
When you talk about making things happen, I want to ask you about goal scoring, because Forest last season were sort of really ruthless and efficient in front of goal, whereas this season I think only Wolves have scored sort of fewer goals. Is that a little bit of a concern and a problem for you this season?
We've had a couple of 3-0s along the way as well. So, there's goals in the team. I think we all know that. Encouraging that to happen and finding the right moments for it to happen is often the hardest thing, and everyone talks about, goal scorers. And I always say in interviews, the top clubs in the world scout kids from 5-6 years old, develop them through, and not many of them come through as goal scorers. So most outfits buy goal scorers, and they develop in different weights and different ways in different parts of the world and all the rest of it. So it's not that easy. But I think we've got players who can score goals here, and I think we've shown strong signs out, but we've got to make it more consistent. Like everything I talk about here is more consistent, the way we train, the way we activate as a side, and the way we create and take chances. So I think we're just looking to find it across the way that we work. But goal scoring has always been the hardest thing. And I take great value in teams and players that score goals, because it is the hardest challenge.
Thanks, Anton. Mark, ITV.
Hi, Sean. Good to see you. Read the decisions. Do you think that it happens to teams more in the bottom half of the table, perhaps teams that are struggling in the relegation places, or do you think it's amplified because each point or 3 points is precious?
I think VR's helped on that side of things, because there was a time when everyone felt, and certainly myself, and I know previous managers to me being a manager used to speak about the big clubs getting the big decisions. I've certainly had that go against me pre-VAR. I think VAR has cleared up, obviously, the obvious one, the offsides, and some decisions. I think the other way, the other day was a debate for it. My reference was a maybe, why is it that the big clubs are still getting them decisions? Sometimes the smaller clubs don't, or not smaller clubs in the sense of size, actually, where they are in the division. I think that's a better way of putting it. And I just think it's a maybe now. I think it's evened out much better with VAR, I must say that. Apart from what's happened to us over the last few weeks, I'm still a fan of VAR. I still think it has its place. I always make it clear, because fans always say, why do you say that? Not for fans. Although I think, as I've spoken, I'm not going to bore you with it again. They could speed the process up massively for me. So I'm still a fan of it, but I just think we've got the wrong side of it. But overall, I think it's evened out things better for the clubs that aren't having such a good time in the Premier League against the ones that are flying. I think it has evened it out better than it was before.
And as a manager, how do you coach that? Because obviously, if your team is not doing what you've asked...
What, coach VAR? That's easy. I could sort that lot out. Don't worry about that. It's easy.
How do you coach situations where a call's gone against the team and it's led to perhaps you not getting a point that you felt you deserved? It's different, obviously, if the team aren't carrying out your instructions, but how do you make sure that the players recover from any setbacks that are really out of your...
Well, no, I mean, the thing with it is they are aware that things go against you. You know, we explain to them, look, there are going to be bad decisions, bad moments, and our own as well, when we're not playing well and things go against. It's all part of the challenge of what it is. It's just that when it's so obvious, I think that's when you feel aggrieved about it. We're all getting, VR's not the perfect tool, and the people who run it are not perfect, and I understand that. There are calls, we've all done it, but even with VR, you go, it's still a tough call. Someone's got to make the decision. So I think players are aware of that. So we don't want to harp on about it. I mean, I know you've got to ask me today about it because my words are quite strong, so I totally understand that. But for me, it's parked. We move forward. I always make it clear the three hardest jobs in the stadium: 2 managers and the referee. I always think I respect refs. Try and take the heat off them. I've spoken openly how they could do that. I don't know why they keep getting them to talk to fans and show the screen and walk over to the screen and all that. Best refs used to not be noticed. Used to do their job, disappear, and everyone would just talk about the game. Now they're sort of part of it, and I don't know why the powers that be keep thrusting it upon them. Leave them alone and let them get on with their jobs if you can. And now and again they question them like I have this time, but I try not to.
Looking ahead then, just wanted to ask you about the table. A couple of wins can really transform a side's fortunes at the moment. You look at Fulham, who perhaps down there.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
In the table. How many clubs do you think should be looking over their shoulder at this time of year? Because it seems quite tight, really. If you excuse
I think there's a certain handful of clubs that we speak of every year, every manager, every pundit, every player, every fan. And it's very unlikely they're in that bottom sort of half of the table. There's so many clubs who will be doing that. Look at recently, Bournemouth flying at the beginning of the season, everyone lauding them, including myself. On many occasions we didn't play well there, but I think they're a good outfit. And they've had a real tough time of it, and that's the Premier League. It just creeps up on you. I think we've gone in a direction which is right and appropriate. I think things have changed. But, we want to get that next win. You get that next win, and as you rightly said, it jumps and it changes. We went from 2 points in it to 5 points out of it, and we're a couple of decisions possibly away from being another couple of points to the good. But like I said, you can't wait for it to happen. You can't guarantee decisions, can't guarantee the opposition, but we can look to guarantee is us and what we do. So that's always been my belief and always been the way I speak to the players. It's just when we have stuff like this, we have to speak openly about the bigger picture. But with the players, that's parked. The decisions are gone very quickly. We just get on with the next game and focus on that.
Just a final one. I know you've said you've been unlucky and that you've touched on this before. Do you feel that you are better than your position at the moment? And if so, then where do you feel is about right for Forest at the moment?
Well, the league doesn't lie. There's a reality to it. So where we are with the reason of, under my watch, I think it's adjusted the table, but that doesn't mean that it's guaranteed. So there's a lot of work to be done. I've said the big results we've had, the main 2 talking points, the 3-0 against Tottenham, the 3-0 against Liverpool. I said straight after them, I said, no, it's just a good step. I've always believed in that. It's not a done deal. It's not, everything's not answered. There's still players here who are developing into the Premier League. There's still a side that are developing as a side. And I'm getting used to them and still learning about them. It's an ongoing process. I just think we're certainly in better shape than we were, because we factually are. Now it's about taking on the next challenge and putting things into practice that we do on the training pitch and delivering. The whistle blows, you've got to deliver, and you've certainly got to deliver in the Premier League. So that's the focus.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Rob for PLP.
Hi, Sean.
Hey.
Just been chatting with Murillo. We kind of reflected.
But that was an interesting one.
Yeah, well.
Did he have his glasses on?
Yes, he did.
Yeah, I thought so. I keep telling him to get them off. That's a spin. No way, I'll get a spin for that one.
Not wearing them during games, though, is it?
It wouldn't surprise me.
We were kind of reflected on a pretty extraordinary 12 months. Obviously, personally for him, he welcomed his firstborn daughter, but also professionally as well. The wins, the FA Cup semi-final, 3 different managers. 12 months, how would you assess the kind of health
The
of
wins,
the
the FA Cup semi-final, 3 different managers, threw that one in there as if it was it with the positives.
Well, it's just been a complete roller coaster, going into Europe, winning in Europe.
Yeah, I don't think players overthink as much as you possibly sort of imagine they do. He's done very well. He's a very good player. He's developed into the Premier League, and he's worked through them. 3 different managers, all have picked him. So no, I think he's done well, and he's still young. I mean, he's still learning. I always say, centre halves and goalkeepers particularly learn the game at a slower rate of knots. Not in a way they're not capable, but the depth of your knowledge as a centre half and a goalkeeper is a much different thing, I feel, to centre forwards. I was one, but I think as you're learning more about the role, the nuances of the game, reading the game, the positional sense, I just think it comes at a slower rate of knots, which is why I think it's not impossible, but it's very rare you see very young centre halves playing in the Premier League or around the world, actually. You don't see many 18-year-olds centre halves, and if you do, they're usually very, very good players, or they're fast tracking into being very good players, or clubs just play them through the learning curve and the mistakes that happen, because they inevitably do happen. But I still think he's learning, and I still think he's doing a very good job of it.
The overall state of the club, the health of the club, as we close, the calendar year, how would you assess it, the kind of level of excitement around the place?
Well, I don't want to speak for others, but since I've been here, it's been excellent. The people, the way they've backed the club and through an awkward period, whether it's rights and wrongs of it. The ownership have certainly supported the club. I think that's for everyone to see. So I think it's in a good place, other than correcting the table and getting further up the table. Europa League, which everyone wanted, that's reasonable shape at the moment with the results we've had. But we've got to still do the work, and it's simple as that. But over the calendar year, if we're looking from the outside partly and then on the inside, I think it's been a very strong year for the club, after a couple of years of getting into the Premier League and then just making sure you're in it again, and then having a super strong season last season, then we're hopefully beginning to show signs of a stronger season this season. But as I said, it's a work in progress. We've got to keep going.
Personally, how would you reflect on it 2025?
Well, interesting, my 2025. Coming out of one, bit of a rest, and then back into another. So we'll see how 26 goes. But overall, a lot of learning to be done, and I've certainly learned a lot.
You played Everton very recently, of course. What do you take from that into this one?
Well, we've got to be right. We were miles off that day. So I'd certainly expect us to give a better show of ourselves than that. And then take the game on. I think the signs are strong from what we've been from what our performances have been. Getting players much more match fit now. So the squad gets deeper and the challenge is right there. So I'd look for that to be a clear sign of us taking the game on and playing to win.
You talk about young defenders. They've got very experienced defenders, obviously very experienced goalkeeper, really well. I think 3 clean sheets in 5 during December. They might not have the attacking threat at the moment for various
Taught them well, you say them two, didn't I? Taught them well, them two. 2 centre halves. Not Jordan, he's a fine keeper and done brilliant all his career, but them two. They learned some of the old tricks. They go all right, them two, but hopefully they're not so good tomorrow.
Yeah. Are they going to be a tough nut to crack, though?
We'll see. I mean, David Moyes' sides, historically, they're organised without a doubt. A big fan of David as a fella and what he does. We'll see how we go, but we certainly the initial thought is to deliver a much better performance than we did about.
Yeah, just finally at home, again, the atmosphere was great the other day.
It was.
What you expected in terms of, I think...
Same again, the fans have been here for a long time. I've referenced that from when I was watching here. And they've remained steadfast to the club, and they do. So long may it continue. We've got to keep delivering, though. We want them to have something to cheer about. Of course we do, and as you mentioned, scoring goals and all the rest of it. But as long as they see a group of players who are giving the lot for the shirt and the badge, then that's a good start point. I think this group are doing.